Good evening, everybody. Our top stories: President Trump due to land in Buenos Aires in about an hour, taking with him his America First message of free and fair trade to the summit of G20 leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is feeling the full force of Trump policy and American tariffs. We'll talk about the president's efforts to save American jobs, to stop Chinese theft of American intellectual property, with former State Department senior advisor Christian Whiten. Also tonight, the out-of-control Mueller witch hunt has reached new depths of pathetic desperation, this time trying to squeeze the president's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, over a business deal that never occurred.
We had a position to possibly do a deal to build a building of some kind in Moscow. I decided not to do it. The primary reason, there could have been other reasons, but the primary reason, it was very simple. I was focused on running for president. There would be nothing wrong if I did do it. I was running my business while I was campaigning. There was a good chance that I wouldn't have won, in which case I would have gone back into the business. And why should I lose lots of opportunities?
And disturbing new revelations about the threat posed to public security and public health by the caravan massing at the U.S.-Mexico border. Hundreds of migrants, reportedly known criminals carrying potentially deadly infectious diseases. We take up that report with former FBI intelligence officer Steve Rogers with us tonight. Also, Rhino lame duck speaker, you remember him, Paul Ryan. He lost the House for Republicans. He sabotaged candidates, but none of that stopping him from lecturing the Republican Party on who should be the party's next standard bearer. We'll tell you about his latest outrage here next. Our top story: President Trump on his way to Argentina tonight, where he will assuredly push ahead with his America First agenda. While at the summit, the president will also sit down with Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss the ongoing trade dispute between the two countries. Prior to his departure for Argentina, the president addressed the prospects of a new trade deal with China. Soon after Air Force One left the tarmac, the administration announced the president would be accompanied by White House trade policy advisor Peter Navarro. At that meeting with Xi, news that the left-wing business media, get ready for this, they decided at that moment the market was down, so they blamed, that's right, Navarro showing up at the Xi dinner for the market's losses. Then the group at CNBC claimed upon news of Navarro's attendance at the Xi meeting, stocks fell to their lows of the day. The network also said then stocks were trading higher, but, quote, dimming hopes of a trade deal between China and the U.S. capped gains on Wall Street. And then the market moved higher, of course, and they didn't know what to say. Here to take up the president's trip to the G20 summit and what to expect from his meetings with globalist leaders, Christian Whiten, former State Department senior advisor to the Trump and George W. Bush administrations. Christian, great to have you with us. Let's start first with China and the prospects of a deal. This sounds like some advertising for some real disappointment for those who are expecting the president to continue his tough policy position on trade with China.
Yeah, it also sounds like deja vu. You know, we supposedly had a big deal with China early in the administration at Mar-a-Lago, and that was supposed to lead to some wonders of trade. Chinese didn't really do anything with it. That fell apart. And then earlier this spring, March, April, I think Larry Kudlow went on TV and said the trade war is over. Interesting. They didn't want to call it that before. And that there was some deal. The president looked at this deal and then decided to apply sanctions. And I think, again, the Chinese are doing that. They're raising hype. They're going to try and offer some framework and say, we're serious this time. Trust us, and just don't put the higher tariffs that are scheduled for January 1 or that second or the third tranche of big tariffs that the president has offered. But, you know, nothing really happens at the G20. And I don't think China is going to fundamentally change its system over dinner. Yeah, over dinner, nor has it shown any disposition to do so. The president himself putting the kibosh on these reports, what he would likely style as fake news, that there would be some sort of framework come out of this, which is usually, no offense, Christian, you're given your background in the State Department, it sounds like typical gobbledygook coming out of the State Department.
that that it just means nothing and really pretends nothing.
Right. Well, and it also could be coming out of the Treasury Department. And as you point out, it's the left of the financial press saying what they're hearing what they want to hear. But if you look at Xi Jinping having just crowned himself, he's in no mood to make compromises either. And it would be disastrous, of course, for President Trump to make a compromise that undermines the hard work he's done.
We've got all sorts of, in this administration, we actually have never-Trumpers within the administration who are working very hard. I give you Anonymous, the author of that anonymous op-ed in the New York Times, who's never been found out, or at least identified publicly. This is a strange time, and the president deciding today that he's not going to meet with Vladimir Putin because of his aggression against Ukraine. What do you make of it?
Well, here again, we see the president is much tougher on Russia than his predecessors. Of course, the media still say he's soft on Russia. Yeah. They say he's friendly with dictators. Obama and his Secretary of State, John Kerry, said they were going to get tough on Russia after Russia invaded Ukraine. The year after that, in 2015, John Kerry goes hat in hand to meet with Vladimir Putin, who keeps him waiting, and then they chuck it up for 4 hours. Trump has actually isolated Russia. He has armed Russia's opponents. He has reacted significantly, and he doesn't get credit.
Well, who else doesn't get credit is Silicon Valley and high-tech companies, big tech, and their relationship with China and their acquiescence, it appears, in politics in this country. They're not standing up supporting the president. They're not trying to forcibly, volubly stop the theft, hundreds of billions of dollars by China. Why not?
Well, they see it to their financial benefit, I assume, although I don't think in the long run it is. I don't think in the long run it's good for Apple that they were not willing to help the FBI unlock a terrorist cell phone, but they are willing to help China censor the internet. All across Silicon Valley, they're complaining now that the administration, that the government is finally looking at Chinese here who are conducting industrial espionage, Chinese nationals who are viewed as overseas Chinese by the Chinese government. They are put under close surveillance. So are students here from China, and they are used as assets. And we finally are getting to the point where we're saying this is not good. This is being exploited by our adversaries and will harm our security. If Silicon Valley got smart about this, send home the Chinese nationals, it would actually be better in the long run. They may have to pay Americans a few more bucks to do these jobs, but they'll save money in the long run because they'll keep their intellectual property.
Yes, and there will be more people who would be able to afford an Apple iPhone 10. It would be, I think they would find, to their advantage. There's a new China study out from the Hoover Institution, and I want to read this part on the new China study, saying beyond economic, if we could put that up, please, beyond economic espionage, theft, and forced technology transfer, China also captures much valuable new technology through its investments in U.S. high-tech companies and through its exploitation of the openness of American university labs. There is absolutely no vetting of students being brought in from China. These Chinese nationals are an important source of that technology transfer. That's a nice expression for theft. It is a calamity that's befallen this country, and there is such a willingness on the part of the leftist universities to continue this. 20% of most universities, major universities, are going to international students instead of Americans to begin with. One has to ask, why is that? And why? Who are they serving?
Well, they're serving the needs of their administrators. Of course, the professors are mostly left-wing, but the mushrooming of staff of, 18 vice chancellors for diversity and gender studies at these universities, that's where the money is going to, a new building, not actual education. So, yes, add to the ranks of unpatriotic Silicon Valley types, add universities. And who really suffers are Asian Americans. We've learned, of course, from this recent lawsuit that Harvard, for example, has a quota on Asians that they're willing to accept, and so they'd rather Asian Americans. Exactly. And so these Chinese who are here, often being used as assets by the Chinese government, will pay full ride. So they are pushing aside Asian Americans who we ought to be training and ought to be giving technical skills, not our adversaries.
Yeah, isn't it extraordinary? Asian Americans, citizens, are being screened, and And international students, including Asians, are being welcomed with open arms as they help to maintain, if you will, those high tuition levels for universities that, for the most part, are repositories of left-wing indoctrination. Christian Whiten, good to have you with us. Thanks.
Thanks, Lou.
Look forward to seeing you soon. Up next, with just a few weeks left in Washington for this Congress. Oh, they don't want to work too hard. 5 weeks remaining. Just a little under that now. Feckless, lame duck Speaker Paul Ryan using his remaining days, well, to just be an annoying son of a gun.
I think the Fed is, by the way, on the right track, normalizing.
Was that issue on the front of Donald J. Trump's mind?
I think the immigration issue is more on the front of his mind. My own view was I would rather talk about the economy. We don't want to have a shutdown. I have no interest in doing that. That makes no sense. He does create some hostility. The Jim Acosta thing, Bob Mueller has been left alone. I think he's going to continue to be left alone. But we still ran on this Better Way agenda. We put it into place. We put most of these things into law.
That man is absolutely delusional and self-absorbed. Did I mention that? We'll take up this ludicrous excuse for a speaker with Ed Rollins when we come back. Stay with us.
This program is brought to you.
Rhino lame duck Speaker Ryan says his former running mate, you remember the one who did so well in the 2012 presidential elections, that is, incoming Senator Mitt Romney, will soon pick up. The obstruction is standard for the Republican Party, left by John McCain.
He feels a sense of civic duty. I think with John McCain passing, for example, Mitt believes that there is a role for him in our party, in being, a statesman and a standard bearer in our party.
We've all been waiting for that. You can tell that Paul Ryan has been. It must have slipped his rather fragile mind that the standard bearer of the party is the President of the United States, for he is the party's leader, and frankly, it's only hope. Joining us tonight to discuss all of this, top strategist for Great America PAC, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst Ed Rollins. I have to say, the speaker continues to astound with his obtuseness, his absolute delusion.
Well, they didn't believe in what Trump was advocating, which is the conservative principles of the Republican Party. Romney didn't believe in it. That's one of the reasons he lost.
Romney didn't believe in anything but Romney, and Ryan doesn't believe in anything but lining his pockets with K Street. These guys are owned by the establishment.
My great fear is that Romney's going to get in there, and when you've got 2 or 3 vote margin, anybody can play queen for a day. And Romney, talking about him being the McCain of McCain basically destroyed the effort to get rid of Obamacare by 1 vote.
Not basically, he did.
And so we don't need another one. And it would have been easier to elect somebody else in Utah. Utah is not exactly a liberal northeast state.
It's getting more so, though.
Yeah, but he was very insistent. He wanted the president's endorsement. The president was generous and did endorse him.
And then he attacked the president.
Right. And my sense is that Mitt Romney gets out there and wants to basically be the new John McCain. There's a lot of us that are conservative that will go out there and attack him from whatever form we may have.
The Republican Party seems to be at an existential juncture. You've got idiots like so many of those in leadership in both the Senate and the House who are working against the president actively and vigorously. If they did their jobs with half as much energy, much could be done by the Hill. But they don't have that, and they don't have, frankly, I can't even imagine why there's such a thing as a Republican Party right now, because you're watching this kind of nonsense. Mitt Romney coming in, Paul Ryan going out, all of it is so.
Well, unfortunately,
pathetic.
Paul Ryan's not going away. Paul Ryan's going to be there somewhere. He has an ambition to be president someday.
You know what he's going to do.
Yeah, well, he's
going to line his pockets
for a while, and then he'll go back to politics in Wisconsin and run for governor or run for something else.
So what's the Republican Party going to do? Because they look like damn fools.
Well, the Republican Party today is Donald Trump. If you don't like that, then go find another party, because the vast majority of Americans who say they self-identify as Republicans, overwhelmingly, even more than when I worked for Ronald Reagan, are Trump supporters.
Yeah. And, Trump supporters have got to be scratching their heads tonight. Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, has just hired a never-Trumper, a pro-China, mad fanatic free trader at any cost to America, Mary Kissel. I mean, how does she get hired?
I have no idea. I'm shocked by it. I like Mary personally. I've been on many shows with her here, but she is not a Trump person. She doesn't believe in the policies that the president advocates. And for her to be going in as a senior advisor to the Secretary of State, to me, is
Well, let's
astonishing.
look at a couple of things that we're talking about. She called, for example, the Helsinki summit with Putin and the president a great propaganda victory for Putin, called the Trump administration's aid to farmers a taxpayer solution to a government problem, criticized the president for canceling military exercises with South Korea. It goes on and on. She is just, it just doesn't make a lick of sense. And why she is there is, you know, there are enough never-Trumpers and Bush establishment types that permeate the government, as well as, of course, Obama leftovers. Well, what the hell are they thinking?
With the 2 years left in this administration, this term, and to get ready for a re-election campaign, you've got to make sure your people are loyal to you and believe in what your policies are. And if I was still in the White House,
what is Mike Pompeo thinking?
I have no idea. I mean, someone should have said to him, "No, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. You cannot have her. You want to give me a rationale why you can have her? All you got to do is go read her columns, go read her tweets. She's been very public about this. And again, she's a nice person, articulate person, but not a Trump person."
The previous Secretary of State for this administration did the same thing and got his tail kicked. This one, it looks to me, deserves the same response by the White House. Well, I can't imagine why it's not happening.
The president or someone ought to have a real hard dart with him, saying this is the most important thing we're going to be doing the next 2 years is our foreign policy stuff, and this is my policy. I want people over there to advocate my policy. And the State Department's hard enough to move forward on anybody's agenda but their own. So
the great thing is this president is moving things by himself.
Right.
This is the man driving the North Korea engagement. He is also driving the new doctrine against China. And frankly, as Christian Whitten pointed out, this president has been far tougher, for example, than his predecessors against the nonsense of Vladimir Putin.
Well, I would hope our good friend John Bolton would basically step in and do something on this front. So,
well, thank goodness that John's there.
Absolutely, I agree.
Ed Rollins, as always.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Congressman Jim Jordan bowing out of the race to be the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. Jordan's spokesman saying this, quote, "It has been made clear to him that leadership is going to be selecting someone else," end quote. Of course, Kevin McCarthy is a mini-me of Paul Ryan, establishment hack. There remains a possibility Jordan could challenge Mark Meadows, talking about an extraordinary development for ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. I wouldn't bet on that either, with Kevin McCarthy following in Paul Ryan's footsteps. And by the way, I'm sure following the guidance of the same K Street masters as did his predecessor. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you believe Rhino Paul Ryan will soon join the Democratic Party, where he has belonged throughout his political career? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs, and like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Up next, the left-wing national media has their hair on fire over Michael Cohen's new plea deal with a special counsel.
It's Shakespearean because somebody who said he would take a bullet for Donald Trump is now pointing the gun at him.
Today is a good day for Donald Trump to resign. I really believe that.
We finally have a rational explanation for why he was so pro-Putin.
What this represents is the possibility of something very simple, that there was money in it for Donald Trump.
The plea today by Cohen tells us that there is a financial connection here.
Michael Cohen could be the single most terrifying person for Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah. Frightening, scary. Oh, boy. Washington Times columnist Tammy Bruce joins me right after the break to take that up, as well as the latest in the Mueller witch hunt. Golly, all of that evidence that they have built over the course of 2 years, it's just astonishing, isn't it? No wonder the president, well, we'll take that up next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. of the party that's in charge.
Yeah, it's driving me crazy. Drive me crazy, Lou.
Well, it's driving us all crazy. You can imagine what the president's thinking in the damn fools who are sitting there pushing him to take a $5 billion installment on a 10-year project.
Yeah.
This is pretty sad. What is the quality of the people around this president? They're appalling. Yeah. As you know. Congressman Andy Biggs, thanks for putting up with all you put up with there on Capitol Hill and occasionally on this broadcast from time to time. I look forward to your next visit. Thanks.
It's always good to be with you. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Coming up, former President Obama engaging in revisionist history. Imagine this. Think what this narcissist, this mad narcissist, guess what he wants to claim credit for? We'll take that up with Ed Rollins. You're going to be astounded, at least a little astounded. Can you be a little astounded? We'll find out. Ed Rollins joins me here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. For the Trump economy and for the boom in crude oil production in this country.
By the way, American energy production, you wouldn't always know it, but you know, it went up every year I was president. And you know, that whole suddenly America's like the biggest oil producer and the biggest that was me, people.
That was him, people? Really? Really? You know the man's got a massive ego, and it sometimes clouds his mind. He seems to think he's not getting the credit he deserves. Well, he sure didn't want to let entrepreneurs and business in this country get the credit they deserved either for building a life, a family, working hard. Here's the former president, just a little reminder.
If you got a business, that you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Somebody else. Well, you know what? He's right about the somebody else in his case. That somebody else, just so the record is straight, the surge in crude oil production in this country while he was president took place on private land outside the domain the president governed, that is the federal oil reserves. Unbelievable. I mean, absolutely unbelievable. Joining me now to take up Cindy Hyde-Smith's win in Mississippi, a government shutdown in prospect if rhinos and Dems fail to fund the president's border wall. Top strategist for Great America PAC, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst, Ed Rollins. Great to see you.
We shouldn't forget the Keystone Pipeline that he rushed right through to make sure that happened too before.
The man, I got to tell you, that stuff is that's just downright scary. That's a level of narcissism I think doesn't even exist in Hollywood.
Well, we knew he was a narcissist. We knew.
Well, we didn't know.
We also knew he was a lousy politician. But I think at the end of the day,
well, you can say that he got elected twice. That's
yes, he ran two good campaigns, but he wasn't an effective leader.
Yeah, I'll accept that one. Let's turn to this crazy idea, if you will, that the president right now is going to be forced to shut down the government because the Democrats aren't funding his wall. Now, first of all, as I've said here, the president is now talking $5 billion, not $25 billion, which means that would be a fifth of the money he needs. Now, stay with me on this complicated math.
Got it.
This is the best I can possibly do. This is as high as my math goes. That means it'd be a 10-year project. I mean, that's completely crazy. We've already lost 2 years because of Ryan and McConnell, right, and of course the Koch brothers and the deep state. Now it's $5 billion, not $25 billion, and they can't get this done in 5 weeks. I see all these reports about gridlock and the Dems. Unbelievable.
Well, equally as important, they're all arguing about we have such a big agenda. We can't set our priorities. We only have 4 weeks. Might have to work weekends or till 5 o'clock every day to get through. I want to see them pass one single thing. This president wants one single thing. He wants a wall. He promised the American public.
Want the wall.
And every Republican, we now have a Republican majority in the Senate. Every Republican in this country, 78%, say building a wall is the #1 priority. So why don't you try and do that?
I think we're watching, what may be when history takes a look. We're going to look, and Paul Ryan's going to go down in history as the man most responsible for destroying the Republican Party.
Lost the most seats in history in modern times for the Republicans. Lost more seats than Nixon did in Watergate. So Just think
with
of that.
the greatest and strongest economy
ever, and a president out there busting his tail every single day for it. So, and the other thing I heard today, which I told you I'll get the facts on, is that he didn't spend his money. That many of the members who lost in close races,
Paul Ryan,
didn't get their money from the Speaker's Fund. So I'm going to find out the facts tomorrow, but I was told that by a member today. So.
Well, that's exceptional. You also heard Andy Biggs say that, just one vote. It's a question of the votes. It's the reason Ryan stayed there to destroy the party.
Well, he's now growing a beard so he can go hide.
Paul Ryan.
We should go hide quick.
I'm going to make you a bet. If he does hide, it's going to be behind a big check.
Yes, it will be.
He's got a big payoff coming from
K Street.
The boys and girls on K Street.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, Ed Rollins.
Big victory last night in Mississippi. We shouldn't underestimate that.
No, we shouldn't. 53-47. It's official.
And she did well. She did a good campaign.
So did the president.
Yes, he did. The president went down, made a big difference.
Yeah, a real big difference. A new poll shows a vast majority of Americans increasingly, I can't imagine why, can you? Increasingly frustrated with lawmakers in Washington. Monmouth University finds that more than 80% of Americans say they are either angry or dissatisfied with the government. 15% say they are happy or satisfied with them. They're on K Street. They're the all the folks funding those lobbyists, or they're in the government, living large. Up next, President Trump comparing the Mueller prosecutions to the McCarthy era while considering a Manafort pardon, not taking it off the table. We take that and much more up with Congressman Matt Gaetz right after this quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. A huge rally today on Wall Street, stocks soaring. Call it the Trump vindication rally as the Federal Reserve Chair backed off his recent rhetoric over the past 2 months, talking about the inevitability of higher interest rates, softening his rhetoric considerably. The Dow gaining 618 points, the S&P up 62, the NASDAQ gaining 209 points. I believe investors liked this new version of Jerome Powell, the Fed chair. Volume on the big board picking up to 3.9 billion shares. Crude oil down more than 2%, now at $50 a barrel, the lowest level in a year. Gold, meanwhile, rose nearly a percent. Silver up just over 1%. Copper rose 3%. Google chief executive Sundar Pichai set to testify next week. He's decided he's going to actually, lower himself to address the House Judiciary Committee. He'll have to answer questions about the alarming anti-conservative bias in his company. He failed to appear at a similar hearing before the Senate Intelligence Committee back in September. The prospect of regulation seems to be focusing the minds of those in Silicon Valley. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. My next guest here to talk about, among other things, Google censorship, antitrust issues, and more. Joining us is Congressman Matt Gaetz, a member of the House Judiciary and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, great to see you. Let's start with the appearance of the Google CEO. I think it's nice that he deigned to actually sully himself by walking into the nation's capital. What do you think?
I'm glad we're having this hearing because we cannot allow the leftists out in Silicon Valley to reshape the 4 corners of the debate, Lou. Now, I don't want Washington running my life, but I sure as heck don't want Silicon Valley running my life. And that's why we need to make sure that we've really got an opportunity for all sides to be heard in the public square. You know, I don't want to see liberals or Democrats censored. I actually want to beat them by having better arguments. Unfortunately, the left always tries to throw a wet blanket over the ability of conservatives to even make their argument.
Do you think that there's a room here for regulation? Because we've got to know what the starting point is. Because we hear the nonsense, I think, from the right that you just don't regulate. That's crazy talk. In my opinion, and from the left, you hear the crazy talk about you've got to decide who the winners and losers are. Equally crazy and both destructive.
Well, I don't love the idea of regulating as a first impulse. What I would do, Lou, is I would go find the special protections that Google and Facebook and Twitter and other companies enjoy in the law, and I would get rid of them. That way, if people are being mistreated, they have a legal right to sue. They have a chance to go and make their case and alter conduct. Unfortunately, what we have now is the federal government giving special protections to technology companies that they don't even give to newspapers.
Yeah, well, I'm not too thrilled about either way, either subsidizing or censoring. But the reality is there does have to be regulation. That should not be censorship. In point of fact, it should define conduct that has been traditional in this country on the part of either telecommunications carriers, which are heavily regulated now, despite deregulation back in the 80s. Let's turn to, if we may now, China and this balderdash warning from the Chinese about war or depression seems to be the only outcome. Not that they would quit stealing $600 billion a year in American intellectual property, not that they would insist on balanced trade with the United States. I mean, who the hell do these people think they are?
Well, it's understandable to see that they think that they can run all over America, because for the last generation, under both Republicans and Democrats, they have. Lou, but now we have a president who's standing up to China. What I'm most excited about is that President Trump is protecting the American innovator. The Chinese have stolen our solar technology, our innovative energy technology. They bring it back to China. They produce it for cheap amounts, and then they go and dump it, putting American innovation out of business. President Trump has said no more. He put over $40 billion of tariffs on Chinese technology. He's ratcheted down their ability to infect our defense industry pipeline. And now I think China has met their match in Donald Trump, and that's not something they're used to. And so they're reacting very strangely.
Yeah, but he's got a lot of folks in his administration. He's also got a lot of folks on Wall Street in particular working against him, throwing lots of money and time. They are, on a shuttle to Beijing, for crying out loud, representing the company's interest and not the U.S. interest, their interest. And in point of fact, as the vice president himself said, they're operating these people in Wall Street, in big business in this country, U.S. multinationals, as unregistered foreign agents. They are working against the president's policies.
The biggest threat to our liberty and our prosperity is big government. The second biggest threat is big business, because there is no body to kick and there is no soul to damn with a lot of these multinational corporations who would just assume move jobs where it's cheaper and where there are no environmental regulations. President Trump has put the American worker at the center of our policies. And Lou, that's one of the reasons why wages are rising faster than they have in more than a decade, because we've actually got policies that put the worker first, not the Wall Street tycoons.
Another cry for regulation from Congressman Matt. I'm just kidding, Congressman. I appreciate it. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Lou.
As always. Up next, Communist China with some tough talk for the America First president. We'll take up the latest Chinese threats to American jobs, American business, America itself. China expert Dr. Michael Pillsbury joins us. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by the Lincoln Wish List sales event.
China must be increasingly desperate, whining about President Trump's insistence that the Chinese trade in a fair and balanced manner and actually quit stealing things, American stuff, $600 billion of it a year. The Chinese ambassador to the United States telling Reuters, quote, "In the last century, we had 2 world wars. And in between them, the Great Depression. I don't think anybody should really try to have a repetition of history." Now that's pretty cute and desperate whining from a country hiding behind the World Trade Organization and their special market status as a developing nation, an emerging nation, giving them preferential treatment as they steal billions, hundreds of billions of dollars a year in American intellectual property. The the prospect is that there will be a high-stakes meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Trump, and the G20 meeting in Argentina ought to be interesting. To take that up now, that meeting between Xi and Trump, as well as the ongoing trade, as the president calls it, dispute, not trade war. Dr. Michael Pillsbury, director of the Center for Chinese Strategy at the Hudson Institute, author of the New York Times bestseller, The 100-Year Marathon, China's Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower. It is great to see you, Michael, and I want to say, first and foremost, it's really embarrassing to hear the Chinese whine like this and utter such gibberish in an official forum from their ambassador. The president's tariffs are working, aren't they?
Yes, there is a sense of desperation, I think. They do scare people. When the Chinese ambassador raises these things, you and I know it's not true, but
who the heck is
scared?
Who would be scared? It's sure as heck not President Trump. It's sure not John Bolton. I mean...
No. President Trump, as I think you know, he's been on to this since the year 2000. He published a pioneering book using some really harsh language about technology theft, just a whole series of criticisms of China.
Who is afraid?
Well, I'm sorry to tell you that the Goldman Sachs crowd is pretty upset.
No, don't tell me that.
And the Wall Street Journal today has a major expose. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I didn't think the Goldman Sachs operation extended as deep into the White House.
You got to be kidding.
As apparently it does, according to the Wall Street Journal. Right. Hank Paulson's he was the former boss of Steve Mnuchin. And today there's this number, I think it's 50 times. Hank Paulson comes down or calls Steve Mnuchin. So we're beginning to get this idea.
Say, you're a China hand.
Yeah,
I'm a political hand.
The Chinese like this,
and I just it's really straightforward. Look who was conciliatory with the Chinese in the trade talks leading up to what was the president's decision. If they're going to ignore him, Mnuchin wasn't exactly direct and clear. He was a little ambiguous in his discussions with the Chinese. And the result was they didn't do a damn thing because they didn't think the president was serious. Right. That's Goldman Sachs style.
I tell you this. I tell the story in the 100-Year Marathon of 1993 when Bill Clinton started out really against China. Yeah. And Nancy Pelosi was with him. Half the Congress, both houses, really stern legislation against China. But the Chinese split the cabinet, and they brought the Treasury Secretary, Robert Rubin, several other people. They brought them over to China's side.
Sorry, did you say Clinton Goldman Sachs again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say.
In that case, it was Citicorp.
Well, it was Citicorp afterwards. He was also the co-CEO of Goldman Sachs. You don't want to miss a Goldman Sachs opportunity like that, Professor.
I think the Chinese
Let's turn very quickly to where we are.
In the cabinet.
Yep. Let's turn very quickly to where we are, and that is a country.
On Saturday night, Saturday night.
I appreciate the compelling, dramatic language, but we got a decision to make. Are we going to be an independent, free nation, or are we going to be part of a supply chain and a global economy run from the United Nations?
A lot depends on the power of President Trump. I'm betting on him. I think he saw this problem initially 18 years ago. I think he's quite determined. But a president can't run every little thing. And so he's got to trust the cabinet and the people in the government to make things happen.
I think he's got to not trust them. I think that's the real issue. Not trust them.
I'm worried. I think the Chinese are pretty smart. They've already been telegraphing actually today, some of the concessions they're going to make. And Lou, the basic idea is to say, well, China is going to open up on its own for all countries in the world and imply that America is not really a special exception. This is probably not going to work, but I'm looking forward to Saturday night, aren't you, for this dinner and the one-on-one session?
You know what I'm really looking forward to is when the Chinese, when the Chinese finally realize, is they may have already, they're at the penumbra of dawning, I believe, an awareness that this president is not going to be played, and that they're going to have to actually quit stealing our stuff as a condition precedent to trading with us. Isn't that going to be a marvelous moment? Let's hope it's near at hand. Michael Pillsbury.
Some Chinese still think he's bluffing. That's the problem. I'm afraid the Goldman Sachs crowd plays up.
That's why in this life...
Don't be afraid of President Trump.
When you call a bluff, you better be damn sure what you're doing. The Chinese obviously don't have a clue.
Exactly right.
Good to see you. Come back soon.
Thanks.
Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you think Communist China's juvenile threats of depression and war simply betray their desperation as they feel the full force of the president's tariffs and demands for free and fair trade and an end to the theft of American intellectual property? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. Up next, the final days of the current Congress. Oh, it's going to get messy. It's going to get very messy if they don't give the president what he wants to fund a wall along our southern border.
Your brain changes as you get older, but Prevagen helps your brain with an ingredient originally discovered in jellyfish. In clinical trials, Prevagen has been shown to improve short-term memory. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Turn up the size and turn down the price with 3 large pancakes for 89 cents at Burger King. Stacks on stacks of